Birth. Innocence and youth. Finding love. Losing it. Chasing what was. Death. Have you ever felt peace before? It could often come as a realization after a life-changing event, acting as an emotion that's possible to hold on to only through fulfillment, and yet it's still possible to feel on occasion, but no, seriously. Have you ever felt it? What about right now? The Weeknd is the perfect embodiment of what living long enough to see yourself become the villain is like, but take out the villain part and put in victim. You see, generally in pop culture, most villains are, but this time, The Weeknd is choosing not to be. Instead, someone who's self-aware of their actions and who tries to do better because ultimately, fulfillment and longevity is what'll bring him peace. In this breakdown, I'll be revisiting The Weeknd's newest album track by track, connecting each song's story from beginning to end and going over the music videos in relation. Now that we've given enough time for some of these videos to drop to digest such an album over the past several months, I believe I fully understand every aspect of what I predicted to be The Weeknd's next trilogy, a day or two before he dropped the ball, and in my eyes, Dawn FM is a masterpiece and an exciting follow-up to his 80s-inspired electro-pop album, After Hours. Although the concept of this video has been done several times already, I have yet to hear mention multiple details in the music that some didn't bat an ear to. But before you watch this video, make sure to check out my biography, where I analyze The Weeknd's come-up, marketing strats, philosophies, and overall who he is as not just The Weeknd, but Abel Tesfaye. Oh, sorry, I meant Abel. From demonstrating his characteristics as a person to painting that very picture throughout sound and cinema, The Weeknd doesn't fail to encapsulate the artistry brought to us in the music, taking inspiration from Michael Jackson's Thriller and infusing the rhythmic sound of Depeche Mode and Donna Summer. The Weeknd has successfully modernized the 80s sound in 4 different ways, so without further ado, let's strike a pose with our kinfolk, sign a prenup, and fall out of love in this ultimate breakdown, The Weeknd's Dawn FM. The Weeknd has recently flirted with the idea of changing his stage name to his government first name, Abel, suggesting he wants to be freed from the character that's The Weeknd. But why? Throughout his discography, The Weeknd goes through multiple stages of love and heartbreak, which in his earlier days are shown to be caused by his drug addiction and rise to superstardom. But even after beating his addictions, he tried becoming a loyal man, dating several celebrities whose failed relationships became a muse for future projects, leaving him emptier than before. However, since 2020's After Hours, The Weeknd has taken a new turn, amplifying his experience through an 80s-style sound and cinema, exaggerating the fast lane with drugs, sex, and parties, but all without failing to register the mental, material, and metaphysical side effects of living life in the fast lane. He pulls back the curtain many celebrities don't, and ever since After Hours, the loop of drugs, failed relationships, and finding love has all come to Dawn FM. But this time, something's different. As of After Hours, he became fixated with telling stories through various music videos, showcasing a Twilight-esque set of themes that are cohesive with one another and attempt to tell a bigger story. Themes taken from movies young and old, to show his appreciation for cinema, just like the music he's inspired from. But his love for movies and music creates the perfect combination, making The Weeknd a different breed of artist by piecing together his very own cinematic universe, similar to how Hollywood is with its movies. This is the future of entertainment, a new way to become a fresh breed of artist. Horror-themed imagery presents itself while 80s-themed music sets the tone for each video, creating an uncanny setting starring himself and his burdens. Most of the time it's been women, some of the time it's been drug abuse. The entirety of it is his inability to escape what calls back to him, and by the end of our story in After Hours, The Weeknd finds himself stuck in a loop, leading to his eventual death. So, if After Hours is supposed to be the beginning of his new trilogy, then why is he dead by the end of it? Well, for Abel, death is his beginning. Obviously he's not really dead, just like how he didn't really get decapitated or varnished in plastic surgery. His death by the end of After Hours is a loose metaphor for the death of the Weeknd character and the birth of something new. But what is this new character we're seeing? This is where Dawn FM comes in. Chapter 2 in the arc that's the Weeknd's character development in this new story. Dawn FM starts with a horizon of awareness. A light peers over the past nights of resentments that looped him to the point of insanity. But now, something's different. The sounds of chirps and uprising of hopeful synth keys lets us know that this is a continuation of the 80s inspired After Hours. But with the sound of birds in nature that opened this album symbolize an epiphany the Weeknd had for the first time, cracking the loop that was the After Hours story and broadens a newer way of thinking. Right now, the dawn that sheds light over the horizon of sinful nights is an opportunity to mature this character we're all so accustomed to. But this realization he's had not only opened the door for emotional maturity and growth, but brought about the anxieties that come with realizing too much. How will he escape the endless loop that's love and heartbreak? To the Weeknd's surprise, he hears a subtle yet disturbed voice appear from within. Setting up the second theme of this album, Jim Carrey's voice speaks to the Weeknd through a radio station he hears himself on in promotion of it, almost suggesting Jim's been wherever he's currently at for a while now, and welcomes the Weeknd to a place he's not quite familiar with. That brings us to the second track, Gasoline, where the intro's instrumental warps us back into the reality of the Weeknd. The introduction of his rebirth is over. His life starts anew. Without his self-awareness of the coil that's his lifestyle, he wouldn't have been able to address his problems, that is his addiction of love and heartbreak, and by pressing play, we've now reset his death, only to watch him suffer again. As the story continues, it seems as though he's discovered a way out, but hasn't come to terms with trying it yet. Instead, buries himself in self-doubt, and believes that he's trapped forever, almost as if this pending doom is purgatory. With the 80s styled music and the incorporation of a broadcasted radio station, he now delves into the very thing that goes back to every man's mental code of ethic, which for the Weeknd is his belief in religion, the third theme of this album. So far, his faith in God is weakened by transcending through nihilistic beliefs. He's finding himself giving up, telling his current lover who he's had empty relations with that he wants her to bury him if he ODs on the drugs that make him feel loved. Frantic and tired of the loop, he tries something new in the track How Do I Make You Love Me, asking his lover that exact question. He struggles with loving too, but only because he's been broken to the point he's so used to it that this is what him and the woman he's sleeping with expects. They're both stuck in this turbulent mindset together, but in the back of the Weeknd's mind, he's asking himself the real question: who will break who first? Without vocalizing it, he's concluded that it'll probably be the woman he's with. She'll be the one to break him, and yet he's okay with it. He'd rather let her break his heart than feel the shame and guilt for the sole purpose of rolling the dice that she won't. Taking a chance at love is something that hasn't worked for him in the past, so by simply asking the question that is the title of this song is a desperate shot at finding what ultimately everyone wants: peace. But nothing's ever that simple. The strive of youthfulness flourishes in opportunity, and money is its middle name. Given the Weeknd has an abundance of it, means he's able to easily fulfill his lustful desires that are only temporary. But this easy temptation is what's keeping him away from real emotion. Not to say these fabricated ideals of fantasy fulfillment shouldn't be experienced in our lifetimes, but the Weeknd's found himself living in them, leaving him to ask his lover the question: how do I make you love me? Without a doubt, Take My Breath is the Weeknd being sure the woman he's associated with doesn't want him for longevity, and instead sees him as a quick experience. Her temptation is the devil in disguise. However, he decides to go with it, not expecting another outcome, but insists on justifying why she is the way she is, settling with the freakish fantasies he can fulfill for her, and lusts over the idea of the pleasures that are empty sex. These raw emotions that are amplified by the drinks and drugs of these parties continue to be his lifeline, expecting nothing less than to be her sacrifice. As The Weeknd enters a discotheque with the woman he's with, the song transitions into Sacrifice, an edgy yet clever way to describe the awe of his lover, alongside the nihilistic and suicidal messages he's been conveying so far. However, he's now had a change of heart. Remembering where he comes from, he's convinced the loop that has been his love and loss is the life that'll always follow him, pushing himself away from the individual he's been associated with since the beginning of the album. He now sees this individual as reckless, impulsive, and a waste of time, an otherwise unfortunate and saddening realization, concluding that he won't sacrifice his effort for someone who can't see him for who he is, who he wants to be. But The Weeknd doesn't even know that answer himself, putting him in search of advice from a rather wise individual who's had more experience than him, someone who he may relate to. After breaking up with the lover he sung about since the first track of the album, A Tale by Quincy acts as an interlude, as Quincy Jones speaks on vulnerable subjects he's willing to share in his older age. With Quincy's 70-plus years in production, songwriting, composing, and more, this multi-award-winning industry legend breaks down traumatic experiences with schizophrenia and abuse from what should have been important female figures in his life. These long-lasting impressions as a child bled into his relationships with family and those he had become romantically involved with, failing to give the girl he had become close with a chance to prove herself, something that Quincy didn't realize until later in life, and something that The Weeknd is doing now. From the tracks Dawn FM all the way to Sacrifice has completed an entire story between him and his lover. He was skeptical about finding someone, but then did, slept with her, and over time tried to get her to love him, but realizes she may be incapable, dumping her in realization that what he's doing is self-destructive. But with the advice from Quincy, a question arises that The Weeknd must ask himself. Was it self-destructive to let this girl in, or was it because he's scared to be hurt again? Ultimately, he's having trouble separating the women who do love him from the ones who are only after the lifestyle he can provide. A rather fair but taxing choice that's caused by experience in failed relationships. And yet, while this is all happening in his head, Quincy Jones reflects on the story he just told, laughing uncontrollably at the contradiction that kept him from love until the track transitions into the next. A few months later, The Weeknd comes in contact with his now ex after realizing his mistake in the track Out of Time. Although Quincy became an industry legend, The Weeknd sees a lot of himself in Quincy, becoming quite vulnerable himself. He confesses to his ex the traumatic experiences he's faced with the women in his life, whether it be experiences with his mother or other women, mirroring Quincy's story from the previous track. The Weeknd wants his lover back. However, he's come to realize that he's out of time. The woman The Weeknd found himself in emotional distress with since the very beginning of the album has now found someone else. But although all hope seems lost, the only thing he can do is reassure her that he'll be waiting for her when her new man messes up. And this part of the story is where The Weeknd realizes that where he's from doesn't have to define who he is, becoming vulnerable once more and repeating the loop that's been the life of him. His ex was his lesson, a lesson that he hasn't seemed to have learned since he heard A Tale by Quincy, making Quincy the crack in the loop that's The Weeknd's purgatory. And because of this epiphany, The Weeknd hears a familiar voice that he hasn't heard since he started talking to his previous lover. It's Jim Carrey, telling The Weeknd that there's still more left to learn about himself before he's completely engulfed in the blissful embrace of his truth, or as Jim puts it, the little light that you see in the distance, referring to The Weeknd's self-discovery as the light at the end of the tunnel. But what exactly is this light The Weeknd's seeing? Jim finishes off the track by hinting at The Weeknd's escape from purgatory, but how exactly is he escaping? And if so, where will he go after? Despite that, he must carry on in the track. Here we go, again. The Weeknd finds himself reminiscing about the success his career has brought him, and then some. using his discography as a reminder of who he is. He can't help but to feel himself, rather than staying upset about starting over, and does so in a way that gets petty. But when recognizing his loneliness, he finds himself securing a friends with benefits relationship with an important person in his life. A risky move that'll ruin their friendship if things get too serious, and as always, they do. For her, she wanted to make her boyfriend jealous, yet when unintentionally sleeping with The Weeknd, she caught feelings for him. As for The Weeknd, he doesn't care to see a future with this woman because who'd want to date a cheater? But still, finds a way to catch feelings for her anyway. The Weeknd rides off the newly found feelings they have for one another and hopes it might stem into something beautiful. But given these two were each other's rebounds, the fear of her cheating again keeps his view on their love a constant fight in his head. The bittersweet instrumental he sings over perfectly encapsulates the patterns he finds himself in. In other words, he told himself that he'd never fall, but instead, here we go again. Tyler, the creator, enters the track to reinforce the idea of security in relationships, telling his significant other that they don't need a piece of paper to signify they're in love, but if they were to get married and suddenly have a divorce, the prenup that he'd make her sign would save him from any financial distress to ensure his security with his then ex. This kind of attitude is what's important for many public figures to face, otherwise, you might end up worse than what The Weeknd has had to endure over the course of this trilogy so far. But this time, he goes through the ups and downs of bittersweet heartbreak rather than drowning himself out in substance. He recognizes these ups and downs as what makes you alive. This road to self-discovery is one overly necessary. He's beginning to understand why he's in purgatory now. The loop that is the story of After Hours is starting to break, and because he has no time to waste, he must take a step back to tell his lover that they should become best friends as an alternative. He loves and respects the relationship he's built with his friends with benefits partner, and would rather be friends in sake of keeping her around. He's sacrificing his love for her in fear that they would crash and burn, and did so nobody gets hurt. The character that we know as The Weeknd is changing right before our eyes, and for the better. He's becoming more self-aware than he was in past relationships, but this kind of maturity and character development doesn't come without inner conflict. The Weeknd might be a changed person, but he's still a lonely one. The outro into the intro hints at a fast forward in time, and The Weeknd has now found himself early in the stages of a new relationship on the track Is There Someone Else? Unfortunately, the character development he'd undergone in the previous track wasn't enough to escape his suspicions when falling for this new woman. However, his experience serves him best, confronting his lover that he knows she's hiding another man who's been close to her heart from the very beginning of their relationship. Although he has no proof, in The Weeknd's mind, he can tell there's an ex involved by the way she looks at him when they fight. He wants her to let him go, in fear she's not committed to the now. But she won't admit he exists for the selfish reason she loves both The Weeknd and her ex. The Weeknd takes a step back in his newly found self-awareness and addresses that he knows he doesn't deserve loyalty with the way he's treated other women. However, he doesn't want to be a prisoner to who he used to be, changing his ways and wanting to settle with the woman he sees a future with. But still, she won't budge. In their next fight, he tells her he doesn't want to be with her if she continues to speak to her ex, and claims that she's hurting him by not telling the ex that she's with a new man, but she just doesn't want to hear it. In the track, Starry Eyes, The Weeknd becomes calm after the heat of argument between him and his lover. He confesses his love, stating he's only ever met her in his dreams when he was young and lonely, and now she's a reality. He doesn't want to lose her and acknowledges she's battered and broken from the last, so she admits it. She's still in contact with her ex, but to The Weeknd's disbelief, it's not the same love she's found for him. The woman and her ex went through a lot together, but they didn't work out, and in her heart holds a special place for him to where she feels she'll betray him if she stays out of contact. As for The Weeknd, he's internally conflicted because he understands where she's coming from. On one hand, he knows how deep two souls can get, even if they weren't meant for each other. But on the other, he wants her ex gone because he knows how men think. The Weeknd needs her to trust him if she sees a future with him, but the woman's counterclaim is that the commitment is already there. She loves nobody else the way she loves Abel, and as always, he wants to believe her. As the song comes to a brief pause, the chirps of birds return, calling back to the opening of the album when the Weeknd wakes from death. This was the Weeknd's epiphany that cracked the loop of Hollywood and heartbreak for the first time. And for the first time, we as listeners begin to understand what these sounds of nature symbolize. They symbolize the Weeknd choosing not just love, but sacrifice and trust alongside it, because being able to give up control over every aspect of the relationship is what'll make the woman he's with love him. The birds and the nature and the calm all symbolize what everyone's after. Peace.
Let me be there.
As the song kicks back up, the Weeknd's made his decision. Starry-eyed and decided he's willing to make the sacrifice for her, letting her stay in contact with her ex, but only on terms they can negotiate to conclude on. The Weeknd's content, but makes one thing a promise, that being, he's okay with her breaking him because he's so used to it. He wants nothing else but to make her feel whole, and wants to be there every step of the way. He doesn't care if he's risking getting hurt, because sacrifice is important in a healthy relationship, and the one thing that he took from Quincy's story is what changed him now: vulnerability. As the Weeknd finds time to be alone, he thinks about the decision he made for his lover on the interlude track, Every Angel is Terrifying. Realizing his vulnerability matured him, he enters the plane of purgatory he's been trapped in. He asks, if he cried out, who would love him among the women here? For if they even pressed him against their hearts, he'd be consumed, because beauty is the terror men endure, and while we stand in wonder, we're annihilated. He reiterates to everyone in purgatory with him. Giving in to the contradiction that is love, the Weeknd finds himself in what appears to sound like an infomercial, placed between the breaks of each track on the radio station, selling the idea of a woman's love to the listener. Intense, graphic, sexy, a compelling work of science fiction. Cinema like you've never seen before. All terms used to describe the women who vawed him, but then sell something else. The exotic, bizarre, and beautiful world of afterlife. This is your invitation to enter. But what is afterlife, and why is he trying to sell it? To simply put it, he knows a lot of men are trapped here in this plane of existence, struggling with their versions of love in their own purgatory-esque hell, and the Weeknd's discovering a way out. He was in that hell himself throughout After Hours, and now he's in purgatory during Dawn FM, and he's trying to reach heaven and what'll be his third album to complete this trilogy, Afterlife. As he describes it, the hell that was the fast life of After Hours is overrated, calling it a total comatose snooze fest. And so it was. But if the Weeknd found his way out, then why isn't he there yet? Enter Don't Break My Heart, where the Weeknd's first words are, I'm paralyzed. He's still stuck in purgatory, but why? He's found himself breaking off toxic relations before leading them on. He's learned to love a woman who he had to compromise for in order for them to work, and he's admitted to an entire plane of existence that he's become vulnerable, yet he's still here. The Weeknd suddenly brought back to his current lover, the one who he had to compromise for in order for their love to thrive. However, the overwhelming feelings of anxiety and worry take over in belief she's going to cheat on him. Yes, he let her stay in contact with her ex, but the reason he hasn't escaped purgatory yet is because his soul isn't at peace like it was for a moment after he learned how to escape the loop. The happiness he found from compromise made him feel at peace, but since he still hates the fact she's talking to her ex, he can't help but feel these ever-looming anxieties that remain present, asking his woman to not break him, unlike what he said earlier. Yeah, he's used to it, but he doesn't want it. He wants safety and security in who he sees a future with, making it known here. As the liquor takes over, he feels she's right for him, but doesn't know if he can take it anymore, recalling his breakup in the beginning of the album, with which he regretted, and is currently flirting with the idea of suicide again. However, although she meant it when she said she loved him, unfortunately, she kept a secret that he would find out on his own. In one of his final conversations with his lover, he knows she's hypnotized him and has been in control of the direction their relationship was taking. But in this song, The Weeknd blames himself for not listening to his intuition. He could get over the fact that she was in contact with her ex, but it was to his surprise that she was hiding a ring.
Things I should've known.
Bringing us to the track, I Heard You're Married. Regardless, if she was worried he wouldn't get with her because of this, it wasn't right lying to him, feeling like he was sharing a woman he had fallen for without even knowing. He sacrificed for this woman, who clearly had her own selfish wits with the weekends, and even though her love may have been real, honesty comes before love, along with trust and communication, something this woman would press the Weeknd about since the beginning of their relationship. Lil Wayne, who's featured, reinforces the idea of not wanting to be the side piece, concluding that he'll kill whoever messes with his heart, out of the anger that stems from false truth. But although the Weeknd tried, well, he did the best he could do. This leads to the final song on the album. As the Weeknd leaves the room his ex remains in, he finds himself back in purgatory, reflecting on every relationship he's been in throughout this experience. The breakup in the discotheque, his friends with benefits relationship, and the woman whom he sought a future with all became a past memory in the story that is his life. Whether he's referring to one of these women, he's concluded that he's meant to be less than zero. He can't get lustful desires out of his head, even though he tried fighting it, and when he fought, he was betrayed and lied to. The instrumental embodies a conclusive, bittersweet ending, a dusk to end a hard day's work. Watching the sunset as the song goes on, the Weeknd reflects on this looming curse, which has kept him from fulfillment and longevity, a lust that's keeping him from finding inner peace. As he stares off into purgatory sunset, he's shaken by the idea he'll never leave, knowing that one day, in the real world, he may die alone due to his lustful nature. There's nothing more he can do to change who he is, and the fear in his eyes remain present. But hey, at least he tried. And in a world of Hollywood and heartbreak, he did pretty damn good in the end. He found who he wanted to be and insisted on being it, but the universe had a funny way of playing things out. Although all hope seems lost, we hear the conclusion of a rather pending fate the Weeknd has to endure. But as he sits there in the emptiness that's his heart, he hears Jim one last time in a rather poetic manner on the final track of Phantom Regret by Jim. Jim tells us, the listener, that we may be in purgatory for a while, reminding us that all future plans have been postponed, and it's time we take a look back at our lives to see where our moments counted the most. Did we hold grudges? How well do we remember the things we owned? When we were alone, how did we behave? Did we ever find inner peace? The pain that lives in all of us is what'll keep us in purgatory after death. In other words, our phantoms linger when we have lasting regrets, and whether you believe in that kind of thing or not, there does hold some truth to what Jim is saying. You see, Jim Carrey's appearance on this album isn't by coincidence. He, too, has gone through a spiritual journey of sorts that have been long seen throughout his career as an actor, and as of late, has told media that none of what he is doing really matters. The questions press would ask him posed to be of no purpose, and in realizing this, Jim was more than frustrated at what people consumed from the media. The banter, gossip, and drama isn't real life, ultimately amounting your biggest fears behind the screen, and those are never more prominent when you feed into the comment section of those dilemmas. Speaking of which, make sure you do so below this video, because your exaggeratedly unthought opinion of me helps boost this video in the YouTube algorithm. As the track continues, Jim reminds us that we may not die in the way we want, and proves the most cliche advice is what we should take in account. Live life in all of its moments, because in order to see heaven, you must be heaven. As the track comes to a close, we hear the sounds of birds and nature. Jim's final words are, "May peace be with you."
See, in life, people change, people evolve. It's because he's evolving. The Weeknd is not in the same life that he used to be in, back when he was making the trilogy, or A Kiss Land. He's probably not in the same mindset. He's not going through the same shit. But what do I land in that? I don't know yet. But we gonna find out. Big Quinn back in here about to give y'all the first reaction to Dawn FM. Let's see what he got for me. Let's not waste no more fucking time. What? What? Okay. Okay. Fucking Jim Carrey, fuck it up, man. Fuck it up. Hell no. My man's in the 80s side, god damn it. We're not getting that shit no more, y'all. Let it go. And catch the vibe. Nice. I fuck with this outro. It's a dope way to end this out, man. Hella dope.
A quick note I want to make before concluding this episode is thank you for being patient with me over these past few months. I know, it's been a while since I've uploaded, and if you've been on my channel at all this year, then you may know why. I plan on picking back up with fresh content, including the continuation of The Genius Of, and as of this video's release, new Kanye West and The Weeknd inspired merch is in the shelf under this video. The support means the world to me. Thank you for being a lasting viewer of my work. As the album comes to a close, you're left with a new perspective on the purpose of life. The Weeknd's story in this album is a perfect sequel to After Hours and gets us hyped for what's to come, but more importantly, sheds light on the struggles he faces as a world-renowned pop star. Although Dawn FM may be exaggerated in some aspects, it concludes his inability to find concrete love, especially with the life he's accustomed to in a world that can be faster than what he has time for. But what I believe we'll see in his third album to complete this trilogy is the opposite of the outcome he's found himself in Less Than Zero. The Weeknd in real life is still alive, which means he has the chance to change his fate. If he wants love, he'll find it. But there's still a fourth theme I have yet to dive into, that being Old Man Abel. Although he may convey his new music through 80s electro-pop and flesh out his religious journey through different planes of afterlives via a radio broadcast in his car, how does the fourth theme, that is Old Man Abel, fit into this overall story of Dawn FM? In the visual elements of Dawn FM, there's a separate story to be told that embodies the same meaning. After the death of The Weeknd in After Hours, he finds himself coming back, then by the end of the video, dies, only to be revived in the next. Engulfed in his pleasures, he suddenly wishes to build unmeaningful love before he finds himself alone in his older age. The Weeknd turns into Old Man Abel, and as he's driving away from his previous lifestyle, it continues to call back to him in various annoyances. Ants tickle his hearing aid, and the radio flickers, causing him to crash in a panic. Stuck in the middle of a crossroads, he finds himself getting pulled back into the life he so desperately tried to abandon. But before it takes him back, the words Dawn FM appear on the radio screen of his crashed car. The little light he once saw at the end of the tunnel is gone, and his lustful spirit is revived on the dance floors of late-night parties. He's back to his after-hours self, yet throughout this party, beats himself up in an attempt to kill his will to find peace. He sees himself as a threat to his true nature. However, what once was beautiful women become hideous demons on the dance floors of purgatory he perceives as the discotheque. Frustrated with conflicting feelings rushing his mind, he compromises, spiffying up for a date in a nearby hotel. Old Man Abel becomes The Weeknd in an attempt to prove he's not living a lie. As the night begins, The Weeknd and his date sing karaoke together, but although they've tried to be better for one another, they're both out of time, ironically singing the same tune that signifies they're both fucked. Hilariously aware of one another's failure to settle, and trapped in a constant cycle of empty sex, drugs, and heartbreak, the part of himself he thought he killed has come back to haunt him. But what The Weeknd realizes he tried killing is what wanted to save him this entire time, to give him fulfillment and longevity that'll ultimately give him a lasting peace. Old Man Abel is The Weeknd's guardian angel, ready to pull him out of purgatory and into the light he knows as afterlife. This was my interpretation of what I experienced listening to Dawn FM, and the video was possible by the support of the viewer. Thank you for following me on this journey, and if you haven't, subscribe to the channel for future uploads. Be sure to like the video and comment. I'll be back soon, and in the meantime, check out the merch shelf below as well. I've been Daniel Eason, your guide through an everlasting purgatory. Much love, and thank you for watching.